I never imagined that my relationship with Clara would end the way it did. When we first met, everything seemed perfect. She was beautiful, smart, and I admired her fierce independence. We clicked immediately, and before long, we were inseparable. We had been together for 2 years, and the idea of marriage was something we had often discussed. It felt like the natural next step for us. But lately, things had been different. The little arguments we used to brush off now felt bigger, more frequent. The relationship that had once been filled with excitement and laughter had grown increasingly tense. We couldn't go a day without bickering over something, whether it was about trivial things like who left the dishes in the sink or deeper issues like trust and communication. It was the night of our engagement party when everything came to a head. Clara and I had invited our closest friends and family to celebrate our decision to take the next step. I was excited. I had spent months planning the perfect night. It was supposed to be a celebration of us and our future together, but I could feel the tension building up all night. At some point during the evening, Clara and I got into a heated discussion. I don't even remember what it was about anymore, but it was one of those petty arguments that, in hindsight, shouldn't have escalated as it did. She was angry, and I was frustrated. I tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't have it. It wasn't long before the argument turned physical. She slapped me across the face, and I stood there frozen, not sure how to react. The room fell silent as everyone looked on in shock. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my face burning from the force of the slap. I didn't know what to do or say. I had never imagined Clara, someone I had loved so deeply, would ever do something like that. I could see the tears in her eyes, but they didn't make the situation any less painful. She immediately apologized, but the damage was done. I couldn't just brush it off. I had always believed that no matter how tough things got, we could work through it, but this was different. I excused myself from the party, needing to clear my head. I took a long walk outside, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My mind raced, and every thought only made me feel more certain about one thing. I couldn't marry someone who would hit me, no matter the reason. The next few days were a blur. Clara repeatedly apologized, pleading with me to forgive her. She promised it would never happen again. But as I thought about it more, I realized that it wasn't just about the slap. It was about the underlying issues that had been festering for months. The communication breakdown, the lack of respect, the growing resentment. When I finally sat down with her to talk, I told Clara that the engagement was over. The look in her eyes was one I'll never forget: pain, disbelief, and desperation. She begged me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. I needed space to figure out what was best for me. The days that followed were filled with calls and texts from Clara, each one more frantic than the last. She pleaded for another chance, promising things would change, but I wasn't sure I could believe her anymore. I needed to heal and reflect on the relationship, and I wasn't ready to jump back into something that had already broken me. The days following the breakup felt surreal. I had never expected to find myself in this position. I had always believed that relationships required hard work and communication, but what had happened between Clara and me left me questioning everything I had known about love and respect. Clara's messages and calls didn't stop. At first, I was flooded with a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, and confusion. I didn't know if I should feel sympathy for her or be angry at her for what she had done. But as time passed, I found myself feeling more and more exhausted by the situation. I couldn't deny that I still had feelings for Clara, and that made the decision even harder. I spent a lot of time talking to my friends and family about what had happened. Their reactions were mixed, with some urging me to forgive her, while others firmly supported my decision to end the engagement. The one thing that became clear, though, was that they all believed I deserved a relationship built on mutual respect and trust. They reminded me that love was not just about good times, but about how two people treated each other in the difficult moments. One night, as I sat alone thinking about everything that had transpired, I realized that Clara's actions weren't isolated. The slap had been a physical manifestation of the toxic patterns we had fallen into. We had been growing apart for some time, and neither of us had been willing to acknowledge it. The slap wasn't just a mistake. It was a sign of everything that had been building under the surface. I also recognized that I had neglected my own needs in the relationship. I had been so focused on keeping the peace and maintaining appearances that I ignored the fact that I wasn't being treated the way I deserved. Love shouldn't feel like a constant battle, and it shouldn't leave you feeling diminished or disrespected. I realized I needed to prioritize my own well-being and happiness, even if it meant walking away from something that once seemed perfect. Despite all this, Clara's persistence continued. She sent flowers, handwritten letters, and even reached out to my friends in an attempt to get me to reconsider. Each gesture was filled with genuine emotion, and for a brief moment, I felt guilty for not giving her a second chance. But every time I saw her name on my phone, I remembered that slap, the sting of it, the shock in the room, and the deep sense of betrayal that followed. It wasn't just about the physical act. It was a message it sent that when things got tough, Clara resorted to violence instead of communication. One evening, Clara came to my apartment unannounced. She stood at the door holding a bouquet of flowers, and there was a look of desperation in her eyes. My heart wavered, but I took a deep breath and let her in. We sat down, and she immediately apologized. Her voice trembled as she said all the right things, admitting her mistake and promising she had learned from it. She talked about how she had been stressed, overwhelmed, and emotional, but she never once fully took responsibility for her actions. It felt like she was blaming everything around her instead of truly acknowledging how wrong it was to hit me, regardless of the situation. She begged for a second chance, saying that she would do whatever it took to prove that she could change. "I know I made a huge mistake," she said, tears in her eyes. "Please don't let this one moment define us. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." But as she spoke, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I realized that while I had once believed in the potential of our relationship, I couldn't ignore the fact that love shouldn't come with conditions or ultimatums. It shouldn't require constant proving or demands. I deserved someone who valued me and respected me from the very beginning, not just when it was convenient or when they had made a mistake. "I appreciate that you're sorry, Clara," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I can't ignore what happened. The slap wasn't just a mistake. It's a reflection of deeper issues, and I don't think I can move past this, no matter how much I want to." Her face crumpled with pain, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. But I couldn't let that cloud my judgment. I had to let go, even though it hurt. I had to do what was right for me. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking just a little, "but it's over." Clara didn't say anything for a long time. She simply stood up, her hands shaking as she dropped the bouquet on the coffee table. She walked out of my apartment, leaving behind the life I had imagined with her. I closed the door behind her, feeling both an overwhelming sense of sadness and relief. The weeks that followed were difficult. I went through moments of doubt, wondering if I had made the right decision. But as time passed, I felt stronger. I began to focus on myself again, rediscovering passions I had set aside, spending more time with friends, and putting my energy into things that made me feel whole. Eventually, Clara stopped reaching out. I knew that this chapter of my life was closing, and as much as it hurt, I realized that it was the best decision I could have made. Some relationships aren't meant to last forever, no matter how much love there once was. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is walk away from someone you thought you would spend your life with. Clara's apology had been heartfelt, but I knew that forgiveness couldn't erase what had happened. I was no longer the same person I had been when we first got together, and with that, I closed the door on our engagement, no longer defined by the love we had, but by the strength I had found in letting go.